If you have red hair today, the worst thing that typically happens is someone asks if your temper matches the stereotype. But historically speaking, that is an extraordinary improvement. In the ancient world, having red hair wasn't just a look, it was a potential death sentence. Depending on where you were born, you weren't just a person with a rare genetic trait. You were a follower of a chaos god, a barbarian, a witch, or, in one particularly alarming Greek theory, a vampire waiting to happen. This is the story of how a simple genetic mutation carried by just 2% of the population became one of the most feared characteristics in human history. Let's start in ancient Egypt, because Egypt did not do subtlety. If you were a redhead here, you weren't dealing with a minor social inconvenience. You were dealing with a religious crisis. Red hair was directly associated with Set, the god of chaos, violence, and storms. Why? Because Set himself was often depicted with reddish coloring. According to accounts from the historian Plutarch, this association was devastating. There are records of red-headed individuals being burned as sacrifices, their ashes scattered to ensure no trace of them remained. In the eyes of the state, you weren't a citizen. You were a physical manifestation of disorder. Ancient Greece took a different, somewhat more creative approach to redhead paranoia. Early writers tied hair color to temperament, claiming redheads were hot-tempered and animalistic. But the Greeks saved their strangest belief for what happened after you died. Greek folklore held that red-headed people were at a significantly higher risk of returning as vampires. Not metaphorical vampires, actual undead creatures rising from the grave. Red hair signaled an excess of blood and a volatile constitution. Essentially, your neighbors weren't just worried about your attitude while you were alive. They were terrified of your inability to stay dead. Rome largely inherited this anxiety, but they turned it into a weapon of war. To a Roman, red hair was the visual shorthand for a barbarian. Historians like Tacitus used the reddish hair of Germanic tribes to describe them as fundamentally other, dangerous, uncivilized, and inferior to the Roman ideal. If you had red hair in the Roman world, you were visually coded as an outsider before you even opened your mouth. It was ethnic profiling with a color palette attached. Medieval Europe is where things escalated to a genuinely dangerous level. During the witch trials, red hair, especially when paired with green eyes, was frequently cited as physical evidence of a pact with the devil. The reasoning was what I like to call architecturally absurd. The logic went like this. Red hair looks like fire. Fire is in hell. Hell is where the devil lives. Therefore, you work for the devil. That logic wouldn't survive a first-year philosophy class today, but it was treated as legitimate evidence in courtrooms that ended real human lives. This created what historians call the Redhead Paradox. Red hair was simultaneously viewed as a mark of danger and, in certain contexts, exceptionally alluring. You were viewed as both irresistible and inherently suspicious at the exact same time, often by the exact same people. Even outside of trials, the superstitions were bizarrely specific. In medieval England, it was bad luck to see a redhead first thing in the morning. In other regions, people believed bees would stop making honey if a red-headed person even walked past the hive. Honestly, that's just a very specific insult to level at a hair color. So, what was actually happening? Science eventually gave us the answer. A random mutation in a single gene called MC1R. That's it. It just causes the body to produce more pheomelanin and less eumelanin. Egyptians burned people over a pigmentation shift. Greeks worried about corpses over a genetic variation. Romans used a protein change as a reason for war. It tells us something unsettling about human nature. We have a consistent, historical urge to find a physical trait to be suspicious of. If you're a redhead watching this, just remember, you survived the most consistently weird discrimination campaign in human history. I'm curious. What's the weirdest redhead stereotype you've heard? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the bizarre parts of our past, make sure to subscribe to Mindful.